chosen one. The bet that was placed on your downfall has officially been lost because you're a lot tougher to crack than originally thought, and you crushed their psychological manipulation by simply remaining unshakable in your purpose. While you were busy building your vision, a coordinated campaign was launched to target your every pressure point, yet you emerged from that engineered collapse, still moving, still building, and still fully yourself. Now that failed attempt at suppression has become the very soil that is fueling a growth they cannot stop, proving that your inner strength is a force with no off switch and no ceiling. Before the game started, there was a version of you simply moving forward, not perfectly, not loudly, not with an audience cheering you on. You were just moving with a quiet, steady, almost stubborn sense of direction. You carried something inside you, a pull, a knowing, a low hum that refused to go quiet no matter how much noise surrounded it, and that something kept pointing you toward a life that felt bigger than your current circumstances. You had a dream that felt too large for where you were standing, and a purpose that kept tapping on the inside of your chest even when you tried to be sensible and ignore it. And you kept moving toward it anyway. That is the detail that matters most, not the size of the dream, not how clear the vision was, not how confident or prepared you felt at the time. The detail that matters is that you were moving, because movement draws attention, and not all attention is celebratory. Some attention is predatory. The specific kind of predatory attention that is drawn to purpose-driven people is not random. It is targeted, calculated, and it always arrives wearing a face you trust. There's something else worth naming about who you were in that season. You were generous. You were open. You extended trust and goodwill, and the kind of access that comes naturally to someone who is not operating from a defensive posture. You were not naive. You simply had not yet been given a reason to close off in the specific ways this experience would eventually teach you. That openness was not a flaw. It was a feature of who you are, and it remains one to this day. But that openness was what created the entry point. Somebody looked at your openness and saw an opportunity. Somebody looked at your trust and identified a vulnerability to exploit. Somebody looked at your generosity and decided it was a resource to drain rather than a quality to honor. What that decision revealed is everything about the person who made it and nothing about you. The version of you that existed before the game started was not broken. That version was whole, purposeful, and moving with an honesty that cost something, as honesty always does. And the version of you that exists on the other side of all of this is not a sadder or more guarded version. It is a wiser one, a version that carries the same generosity and openness, but now holds the discernment to know where those qualities are safe to invest. Pay close attention to what started shifting in your life right around the time things started clicking for you. Right around the time the dream started getting closer to real. Right around the time your confidence was building and your vision was sharpening. That is precisely when the interference showed up. Not before, not randomly, but exactly then, when you were gaining traction and becoming more difficult to stop through ordinary means. That timing reflects someone watching you long enough to understand that a direct attack would not work on you. You are too grounded for obvious tactics, too aware, too spiritually connected to be taken down by anything loud. So the decision was made to go subtle, to go internal, to turn your own mind into the most effective weapon against you. That quiet, strategic, cowardly decision is where this whole thing begins. Here is how it started, so slowly that you almost cannot point to the beginning. One comment. It was delivered casually, maybe even wrapped in what looked like genuine concern. I just want you to be realistic. Or maybe it came softer, harder to argue with. You know I believe in you. I just don't want you to get hurt. The seed goes in. You do not feel it land. You file it somewhere in the back of your mind and keep moving. Then another one arrives, a little heavier this time. People like us don't usually make it. doing things like that. People like us, 2 words doing enormous damage very quietly. With those 2 words, you are already categorized, already capped, already written into a script that ends before it gets interesting. You shake it off and keep moving, then come the comparison drops. Another person gets lifted up specifically in front of you, not to celebrate that person, but to measure you against them and make sure you understand you are coming up short. The implication never gets said out loud, because it does not have to be. It plants itself on its own, and then, once enough seeds are in the ground and starting to take root, the maintenance begins. The little reminders, the redirects, the moments where you are about to stand fully in your power, and something intervenes, a comment, a sudden mood, a pointed look, a manufactured moment of chaos, just enough to pull you slightly off center, not dramatically, just enough to introduce static into your signal and slow the momentum you were building. Taundem, this is psychological manipulation at its most sophisticated. It is not a sledgehammer, it is a scalpel. It uses precise, patient, repeated pressure against the soft tissue of your self-belief. The design is not to stop you immediately, but to make you bleed slowly, to make you progressively weaker, and to make you more dependent on the very source of the harm for reassurance, those same hands offering the bandage that were quietly causing the wound. But here is what needs to be understood right now. None of it worked the way it was supposed to. The seeds went in, but something in the soil of who you are, something deep, something pre-existing, something that was never accounted for in the planning, refused to grow what was planted. You were about to do something that nobody planned for. Lockis Planderfit. If this message speaks to your soul, hype this video so other chosen ones can discover it. The seeds were just the surface layer. Something more sinister was operating underneath. What was actually being engineered was not simply a shaken confidence. Shaking your confidence would have been too small, too temporary. What was being constructed against you was a full identity replacement. The goal was to make you forget who you were and accept a version of yourself that could be predicted, managed, and controlled. A version that checked in before making a move. A version that measured its worth through external approval and felt genuine panic when that approval was withheld. A version so thoroughly convinced of its own inadequacy that it stopped being a threat to anyone. What a bind. That is the real architecture of what was built against you. One identity replacement does not happen through one dramatic event. It happens through accumulation, through the slow, patient erosion of the specific qualities that make you who you are. Your directness gets labeled aggression. Your sensitivity gets labeled weakness. Your ambition gets labeled arrogance. Your discernment gets labeled paranoia. Your boundaries get labeled selfishness. Every quality that is actually an asset, every trait that is actually part of your divine assignment, gets systematically relabeled as a flaw that you need to correct. Oftentimes, you start doing the work yourself. You begin self-editing, shrinking the qualities being targeted, performing a softer and smaller and more palatable version of yourself. Not because you believe in that version, but because you have been conditioned to believe the real version is too much, is broken, is the reason things keep going wrong in your life. That is the trap. Your own voice gets weaponized against you, and your own self-awareness, the very gift that was designed to protect you, gets turned into a tool of self-destruction. But here is what the whole operation failed to anticipate. You cannot fully replace someone who is called. You can layer over the identity. You can pile on enough noise and manufactured self-doubt to muffle it temporarily, but the calling keeps breaking through, like a signal that refuses to die, no matter how much interference is stacked on top of it. The real you, the purpose-carrying, chosen, divinely assigned you, does not go quiet simply because someone needs it to. And they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us. But we will not give up our voice. And now we have something they truly can't: silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones. Press play. That's all. For $7, you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. When the quiet approach started losing ground, things escalated. The seeds were not taking the way they were supposed to. You kept moving. You kept creating. You kept showing up in ways that made the dream more real, not less. And that progress, each small visible piece of it, became a problem that needed to be solved. So the strategy shifted. The volume went up. The pressure became less subtle, and the approach became far more direct. The arguments started, and these were not normal arguments. These confrontations had a setup, a trigger, a deliberate escalation pattern, and a predetermined destination. They were not organic conflicts arising from genuine disagreement. They were engineered situations designed to deliver you to a specific emotional state: confused, destabilized, reactive, where you would be most likely to do something irreversible, say something you could not take back, or make a decision out of emotional chaos that would take you a long time to recover from. What came at you was rehearsed. The lines were thought through in advance. The angles were prepared. The likely responses to your responses were already mapped out. When the argument started, you were improvising against a prepared script, and you did not know that, but it was happening. Presence became a weapon. Volume became a weapon. The deliberate act of standing over you, of taking up more physical or emotional space, of using size or authority or energy as a tool of intimidation, all of it was calculated. The hope was that you would crumble under the combined weight of the manufactured doubt already living in your head, and the escalating external pressure bearing down on you from the outside. You will never find anybody better than me. Planted like a flag directly into the center of your self-worth. You will never build something like this again. You need this. Without this, the dream dies. You are nothing special on your own. That was the moment the entire campaign had been building toward. The goal was your surrender. The moment you would stop trusting yourself and hand the wheel over to whoever engineered the chaos. And here is where everything turns. You did not surrender. Something cracked, just not in the direction that anyone had planned. Tumultance. There was a moment, and you know the one. Maybe it arrived quietly, as a sudden stillness in the middle of everything, where things became unusually clear. Maybe it arrived through one specific word, one specific move, one specific thing that landed wrong and tripped something in you that had been building for a very long time. However it arrived, and in that moment, the fog lifted, the noise went quiet, and you saw it, all of it. At once, all of it. The seeds, the comparison drops, the manufactured arguments, the staged confrontations, the planted lines about your limitations. The entire architecture became visible all at once, the way you see a trick, the moment the mechanism is explained. Not with confusion, with total, crystallizing, irreversible clarity. And you named it out loud. You did not crumble, you did not run, you did not absorb it in silence. You stood in the middle of everything that had been built to destroy you, and said with your actual voice exactly what was happening. You called the manipulation by its name. You called the gaslighting by its name. You said what you saw, clearly and directly, without asking anyone for permission to say it. That is not a small act. That is the act. That is the single move that dissolves an entire operation. What needs to be understood about psychological manipulation is this. It runs entirely on your not seeing it. The moment you see it clearly and name it out loud, the mechanism stops functioning, the architecture collapses, and the person on the other side is exposed, not just to you, but to themselves. They were standing in the wreckage of a plan that just failed in real time, facing someone who refused to perform the role of a target. The jot out loud would damn it, you denken oft. The moment it be more powerful fine, honskally thought of caught your mukamich to the mediox den commanding yiston. Someone operating from genuine strength does not flinch when the truth is spoken plainly. Someone with nothing to hide leans in and engages. But manipulation depends entirely on your confusion. The moment your confusion was removed, the moment you stopped performing the role they needed you to play, the power dynamic shifted completely, and what was left standing was not the manufactured version of you they had spent so long trying to install. Wasteward's you, the real one, unedited, unbroken, still here. Wasteward. Here is something that nobody tells you about psychological warfare. Wasteward, it has to land somewhere. All of that dark, calculated, deliberately deployed energy, when you refused to receive it, when your foundation turned out to be too solid to be poisoned, when the seeds hit soil that alchemized them instead of growing them, that energy had nowhere left to go, not because you sent it back, not because you did anything beyond refusing to hold it. Energy that is released outward returns to its source when it cannot find a home. And the source of everything that came at you is now living inside the very operation they designed. That person is sitting with everything that was released, wrestling with a psychological weight that has no external target anymore because the target refused to stay in place. You know anything, and here is what makes this especially significant. None of it can be talked about openly. Consider what that actually means. The full account of what was done to you cannot be shared without that person explaining what they actually did. The moment that explanation begins, everyone listening starts applying it to their own experiences. People begin asking themselves whether the same thing happened to them, whether the patterns they noticed but could never name were actually the same playbook being used on them too. And suddenly the carefully contained operation has blown open in every direction. So there is only silence, private, uncomfortable, compounding silence. What? You did not engineer that consequence. You simply refused to break, and the refusal alone was enough to set the whole reversal in motion. You kumba. Now here is what this reversal means specifically for you going forward. Every piece of the false identity that was being layered over your real one is dissolving. Every label that was placed on your strengths to make those strengths feel like liabilities is losing its grip. Your directness is coming back online as the asset it always was. Your discernment is coming back online sharper than it has ever been. Your ambition, the one that was being quietly pathologized and redirected, is coming back online with a clarity of direction that could not have existed before you went through this particular fire. You are not returning to who you were before the attack. You are arriving at who you were always supposed to become. Returning suggests recovery. What is actually happening is emergence. The fire did not restore the original. It revealed something far better, something tested, something that knows in its bones exactly what it is made of, and that knowing changes everything about how you move from here. The tendency for people who carry purpose is to compress the weight of what they walked through, to say it was not that bad, to perform resilience before the full acknowledgement of what was endured has even happened. to find a way to make the experience seem smaller, so you do not have to fully reckon with the size of the battle you were actually in. Naren, stop doing that. What was aimed at you was not a minor setback. The intentional, premeditated, sustained campaign against your mind, your confidence, your sense of self, your dream, that was an assault. The fact that it left no visible marks is not evidence of its smallness. Psychological damage does not appear on the surface. It lives in the nervous system. It lives in the moments of self-doubt that seem to arrive from nowhere. It lives in the voice that sounds like yours but says things you would never say to someone you loved. Give yourself the full credit for what you carried. Give yourself credit for the seasons of sitting with doubt that was not yours but felt completely real. Give yourself credit for the mornings you had to convince yourself to keep going against a current of manufactured hopelessness. Give yourself credit for the times you second-guessed your own instincts because so much work had gone into convincing you that your instincts could not be trusted. You carried all of that, and you kept showing up anyway. You kept creating, building, and moving forward, even when the movement was slow, even when you could barely see where you were going. That is not ordinary endurance. That is what happens when purpose gives you a tolerance that ordinary ambition could never sustain. You were not surviving this alone. You were being held by something that does not run out, does not withdraw, and does not negotiate with human agendas. The fire was real, and you walked through it without burning. That is not luck. That is covering, and here is what is worth sitting with. The periods that felt most like stagnation, the seasons where you could not measure any visible progress, where the dream felt distant and the pressure felt unrelenting, those seasons were not wasted. Those were the seasons where your root system was going deeper, where your foundation was being laid in the dark, beneath the surface, in ways that did not show up in any external metric, but were absolutely essential to what you are about to build. You could not see it then. You can see it now. Every painful season was doing something. Every moment of doubt that you pushed through anyway was adding to an internal infrastructure that no external attack can reach. And that infrastructure, that deep, quietly assembled, battle-tested foundation, is exactly what you are standing on right now, not the comfortable version of yourself, the real one, the version that went through something specifically designed to destroy it, and came out the other side still intact, still purposeful, still pointed toward everything that was placed inside you, before any of this ever started. Somewhere right now, there is a person sitting very still, not at peace, still in the way someone goes still when they are watching something they cannot stop and cannot look away from. On the edge of your world, through a screen or a mutual connection or whatever thin channel still provides a line of sight into the life that was supposed to have been derailed, your life is moving in exactly the direction the whole operation was designed to prevent. You are being watched. And every time that view comes in, the information is genuinely difficult to process. Lord, you are healthier, you are freer, you are more yourself than you were during the season when the pressure was at its heaviest. You are more creative, more alive, more in alignment with the purpose that was supposed to have been extinguished. Toys, this does not compute for someone who invested so much in stopping you. The calculation keeps running, and the result keeps coming back wrong. Everything that was poured into your collapse, the time, the strategy, the sustained focus, the deliberate cruelty disguised as something else, all of it was aimed at one outcome, and the outcome never arrived. Toys, what is happening instead is the opposite, and the opposite is fully visible, undeniably and continuously visible. Seer, here is what you are learning from this, even if you have not yet put the full label on it. The size of the opposition you attracted has always been a measure of the size of what you carry. People with small intentions do not build elaborate, sustained psychological operations against people they genuinely believe are beneath them. You only bring that level of effort and architecture to a threat you are already afraid of losing to. The opposition was a compliment in disguise, a dark one, a painful one, but a compliment. You were seen as a force worth stopping, and that force that was being targeted is exactly what you are just beginning to understand the full dimensions of. Here is what needs to land completely. You walked through a campaign that was specifically designed to end your forward movement, and your forward movement did not end. That is not luck. That is evidence about the nature of what you carry and how deeply it is rooted. Purpose that survives that level of intentional opposition is not fragile purpose. It is anchored, tested, and proven, the kind that does not require ideal conditions to keep going, the kind that grows in the dark because it was never dependent on comfortable circumstances to begin with. Every day you kept building during the pressure was a day you were demonstrating to yourself and to something far bigger than this situation exactly what you are made of. You were not just enduring, you were proving, and that proof is now part of your permanent record. Nobody can revoke it. The proof has been made. You did not plan this, but your refusal to break sent a signal outward into every space connected to your life. People who had been in proximity to the same source, people who had felt the same subtle undermining, who carried their own planted doubts without fully understanding where those doubts came from, those people are now recalculating. Your visible survival is giving them a framework they never had before. It is giving them a way to name what they experienced, a mirror that reflects back a pattern they could feel but could never quite put language to. You did not have to say a single word to them directly. Your standing spoke for itself, and your survival did something else, something that belongs specifically to why you are tougher to crack now than you have ever been. You are tougher to crack not just because you endured the first attempt. You are tougher to crack because the first attempt handed you the entire manual. You lived inside the operation. You felt it from the inside. You learned to recognize its texture and its temperature. You learned what a designed comment sounds like versus a genuine one. You learned what a manufactured conflict feels like versus a real disagreement. You learned what it looks like when approval is used as currency and withheld as punishment. That knowledge now lives in your body, in your instincts, in the part of you that registers information before your conscious mind has even finished processing it. The next planted seed gets felt on contact. The next staged confrontation gets recognized before the setup is fully deployed. The next attempt to use intimidation or manufactured chaos to destabilize you encounters someone who is no longer operating without full awareness. You are upgraded by the very attack that was designed to diminish you. The curriculum was brutal, but the degree it produced belongs to you permanently. You are Alpha Tau, and this upgrade reaches far beyond protecting you from future manipulation. It changes how you move through every environment you occupy. You read situations differently now. You understand motivations more quickly. You know what genuine support feels like, because you have experienced what performed support feels like up close, and the contrast between those two things is now unmistakable to you. You also know what real opposition looks like, which means you no longer waste energy treating ordinary friction as a personal attack. That level of calibration makes you more effective at everything you are building. It makes you a sharper judge of who belongs close to you. It makes you faster at recognizing alignment versus misalignment. It makes you more decisive, because the noise that used to slow you down, the manufactured doubt, the constant second-guessing, the reflexive checking of your own instincts against someone else's verdict, that noise has been replaced by a quiet, self-sourced, unborrowable knowing. You did not just survive the attack, you absorbed everything useful that it contained, and that knowledge is now yours to deploy in the service of everything you were called to do. The fire you walked through burned away everything that was never supposed to be there, every counterfeit connection, every conditional alliance that existed only because it served someone else's agenda, every relationship built on the architecture of your compliance. All of it is gone and cleared, and what remains after a clearing is not emptiness, it is space, clean, open, ready to receive space, deployed. Into that space comes the direct opposite of everything that just left. Deployed, night and day. That is the only honest way to describe the contrast. Where there was someone steadily depositing doubt into your life, you are about to experience someone depositing genuine belief. Not the conditional kind that evaporates the moment you stop performing for it, but the kind that shows up for the vision before the vision is proven. The kind that looks at what you are carrying and says, without hesitation, that it is worth standing next to. Doubt. Where there was manufactured chaos, genuine peace is available to you now. Not the absence of challenge. That is not what peace actually is. Peace is the presence of something steady underneath every challenge. It is a foundation built from honest material, by people who have honest intentions toward you. Where there was someone using their presence to make you feel small, people are now moving toward you, who find your size inspiring rather than threatening. People who want more of you, not a reduced version of you. People who invite you to expand rather than contract, who celebrate what you are building instead of engineering quiet reasons for you to abandon it. Some of the people who were warned against you, people who were deliberately positioned away from you by the same force that ran the operation against you, those people are no longer listening to the warning. The evidence of your life has become louder than any narrative built against you. They can see what is real, and what is real is you, still standing, still building, still carrying the light that made you a target in the first place. What was designed to isolate you is in the process of assembling your people. This is also the moment to acknowledge something important about what you need to do with this new season. The energy shifting in your favor does not mean everything becomes effortless. What it means is that the interference has been cleared, the static is gone, the manufactured obstacles and the psychological weight that was draining your focus before you even got to the actual work that is no longer part of the load you are carrying. The creative output, the business, the calling, the contribution, the thing that was placed in you long before any of this interference began, and now you get to move toward it, without someone actively working to redirect you away from it at every turn. That is a fundamentally different experience. Use it with full intention. Pick up what was set down, return to what was paused, not with the weight of someone trying to make up for lost time. There is no lost time when a season served a purpose, but with the clean and unencumbered momentum of someone whose path has been cleared and whose direction has been confirmed by everything they just walked through. The green light is on. It has been on. You just had to get through the season that was designed to convince you there was no road ahead. Wind went into that season of pressure carrying a dream, a calling, and a divine assignment that somebody decided needed to be permanently destroyed. Every tool in the psychological manipulation playbook was deployed against that assignment, and not one of those tools accomplished what it was sent to accomplish. The doubt that was planted in your mind grew into the root system of an unshakable self-knowledge. The manufactured arguments grew into a vocabulary that lets you identify manipulation the moment it enters the atmosphere around you. The pressure grew into the kind of muscle that does not fold under weight. The dark seasons grew into the wisdom of someone who knows how to generate their own light independently and reliably, regardless of external conditions. Did it? Everything that was brought against you, you turned into something permanent and useful, not because suffering is noble in itself, because you are alchemically built, because chosen ones do not absorb destruction, they transform it. The input was death, the output is a garden. And here is the final piece that closes everything. The person who poured all of that time and energy and strategy into your downfall built nothing of their own during that season. Every seed they had was spent on you. Every creative and strategic resource was directed towards stopping you, and the attempt failed. So what remains on their side is not just the failure, it is the emptiness of a season spent entirely on destruction with nothing to show for it. No harvest, no growth, no garden of their own. You have the flowers, you have the discernment that no comfortable season of life could have produced in you. You have the tested, proven, fire-forged confidence of someone whose purpose survived intentional opposition and came through completely intact. You have the knowing, the specific, deep, unborrowable knowing of someone who went all the way through the dark and discovered that the light waiting on the other side was their own all along. You are a lot tougher to crack than originally thought. You are a lot more rooted than anyone calculated. You are a lot more covered than anyone planned for. The attempt to collect you came back empty-handed. The manipulation that arrived to rewire your mind found the wiring far too strong. The seeds of destruction that were planted in your soil grew into something that now belongs to you for the rest of your life. Not quietly, not while checking over your shoulder to see whether it is permitted. Rise into the full size of everything you were always meant to be. Let the dream take up exactly the space it was designed to occupy. Let the calling be exactly as loud as it actually is. Let the light be exactly as bright as it has always been. Stop negotiating your own visibility with people who were never going to celebrate it. You were supposed to be buried. You were planted instead, and chosen one. Everything that is planted in divine soil, watered by divine purpose, and tended by divine timing, grows exactly as large as it was always meant to grow. No permission required, no approval needed. Just you, your purpose, and the garden that grew where someone else planted the grave. Go tend it.